I stood at the gleaming glass doors of the Sunnyvale Estates clubhouse, clutching a simple wreath of white lilies only to be blocked by Karen Voss herself, the self-appointed queen of our gated community. She leaned in close, her pearl necklace gleaming under the perfect afternoon sun, and whispered with that fake sweet voice every resident had learned to dread. "Kinsley, darling, you've lost the right to mourn here." Section 7.2 of the HOA Covenants clearly states that non-compliant family members may not participate in community memorial events. She snapped her fingers, and two burly security guards in crisp polo shirts embroidered with the Sunnyvale logo stepped forward like they were guarding the White House instead of a glorified pool house. The doors slammed shut with a hydraulic hiss that sounded final. Inside, I could hear the soft murmur of neighbors who'd rather die than miss free cucumber sandwiches. My chest tightened. Mom, Denise Marlowe, had lived in this neighborhood for 20 years. She paid her dues on time, trimmed her hedges to the exact millimeter, and never once complained when Karen slapped a $250 fine on her for unsightly holiday lights 2 days early. I just wanted to say goodbye. I turned to leave, heels scraping the manicured walkway, when the sound of screeching tires shattered the fake serenity. Four identical black sedans tore through the HOA entrance gate, ignoring the speed bump and the authorized residents only sign, and skidded to a halt right in front of the clubhouse, blocking the hearse like it was a parking violation. Every head in the parking lot snapped around. The lead car's rear door opened with military precision. A black stiletto heel emerged first, followed by the rest of a woman who looked like she owned the entire zip code. Silver hair cut in a razor-sharp bob, black morning suit that probably cost more than my annual HOA fees, and an aura that made the air feel 10 degrees colder. Karen and her two adult kids, Belle and Trent, burst out of the clubhouse like they'd been shot from a cannon. Karen's face went the color of spoiled milk. "This is impossible," she hissed, clutching her laminated rulebook like a shield. "We buried you 5 years ago." The woman removed her sunglasses slowly, revealing storm cloud gray eyes that matched mine exactly. Evelyn Halstead, founder of Sunnyvale Estates, the woman whose helicopter had supposedly plunged into the Amalfi Coast in 2021. The woman the entire neighborhood had held a candlelight vigil for. She was very, very alive. Karen tried to recover, smoothing her blazer with trembling hands. "This is private HOA property. You have no authority here." Evelyn's voice cut through the parking lot like a gavel. "You buried an empty casket, Karen. And now you're trying to bury my daughter before the ink is dry on anything." She glanced at me for the first time, a quick, assessing look that wasn't warm but carried recognition. Then she turned back to Karen. "Move." The security guards who'd been dragging me moments earlier suddenly found the pavement fascinating and stepped aside. Evelyn ascended the steps, heels clicking like countdown timers. Karen actually tried to physically block the door, but Evelyn simply pushed past her the way you'd brush lint off a sleeve. The contact made Karen stagger like she'd been slapped with a $5,000 fine. Inside the clubhouse, the air smelled of forced lilies and floor wax. Mourners froze mid-bite of their finger sandwiches. Evelyn walked straight to the closed mahogany casket on its rented dais and stared at it like she could see through the wood. The funeral director, Mr. Abernathy, fluttered forward in panic. "Madam, we're in the middle of a service." "Pause it," Evelyn commanded. "Do not seal that casket. Do not move it 1 inch toward cremation." Karen scrambled onto the dais, face purple. "This is a farce. Security, remove this imposter. She's disrupting the sanctity of my wife's memorial." Evelyn turned to the room, voice carrying without a microphone. "Sanctity? While Karen rushes a cremation so fast the body hasn't even cooled. Tell me, Karen, since when does the HOA president rush anything that doesn't involve a secret payout?" The crowd gasped. Karen screamed, "You're dead." "I'm standing right here," Evelyn replied calmly, which suggests the reports were exaggerated. She pulled a sleek gold card from her clutch. "Mr. Abernathy, the Sapphire Trust One Control, still owns the land this entire neighborhood sits on. We fund your clubhouse renovations, your golf course sprinklers, your little community pride grants. Move that body toward a furnace before I authorize it, and I will foreclose on every lot by noon tomorrow and turn Sunnyvale Estates into a parking garage. The threat landed like a perfectly timed violation notice. Mr. Abernathy swallowed, so hard as Adam's apple did a full lap. We will pause the service. Pandemonium erupted. Karen looked ready to lunge, but Trent grabbed her arm. Evelyn turned to me. Kinsley, with me. Now. She marched me into the private grieving room off the altar and locked the door with a click that sounded like a safe ceiling. She dropped her clutch and let the steel posture slip for half a second, revealing an 80-year-old woman carrying the weight of a neighborhood. Grandmother, I breathed. You're supposed to be at the bottom of the Mediterranean. And you're supposed to be a forensic auditor, she snapped, steel returning instantly. So stop gawking and start thinking like one. I faked my death 5 years ago because a faction inside the HOA wanted the trust. They were willing to use car bombs. The only way to protect Denise was to disappear. She tossed a thick manila envelope onto the table. This is a copy of the dormant trust clause triggered by Denise's certified death. Karen doesn't know it exists, but it freezes every HOA asset the moment her heart stopped. My phone buzzed, the synced calendar notification. Wells Fargo notary appointment at 10:30 a.m. Today. The obituary Karen had posted said mom died peacefully yesterday at 9 a.m. But yesterday afternoon at 4 p.m. Someone had used mom's debit card to pay a notary fee downtown. Dead women don't notarize documents. I looked up voice cold. Why did mom have a notary transaction 7 hours after Karen claimed she died? Karen's face, visible through the cracked door, went the color of old milk. She knew I knew. The game had just changed. I straightened my jacket and followed the dead woman back into the lion's den. The silence inside the clubhouse wasn't peaceful. It was the suffocating quiet right before the HOA fines start rolling in. Evelyn didn't wait for the room to clear. She turned to me in the vestibule, eyes locking like a spreadsheet cell that refused to balance. Kinsley, you are not at a memorial. You are standing in the middle of an illicit asset transfer. They are not saying goodbye to Denise. They're disposing of evidence so they can unlock the HOA trust. My mind flashed back to the notary timestamp. I saw something on my phone. Mom had a notary appointment yesterday afternoon, hours after the death certificate Karen filed. Evelyn nodded, not surprised. Good. You're waking up. Karen is sloppy. Greed makes people careless. She thinks she's playing HOA hopscotch, but she's sitting at a chessboard with billion-dollar pieces. She slid a grainy surveillance photo across the table. It showed a woman in mom's coat and oversized sunglasses signing documents at the bank. Behind her, a figure in a hoodie with a chunky silver bracelet rested a possessive hand on the chair. That's not Karen, I whispered. No, Evelyn said grimly. But the timestamp is 4:15 p.m. Yesterday. Either the death certificate is a lie, or that isn't your mother in the chair, or worse. She was alive yesterday afternoon, forced to sign, and killed immediately after. Bile rose in my throat. This wasn't just HOA bullying. This was murder dressed in pastel blazers and covenant violations. Evelyn grabbed my shoulders. I handle the legal war. You dig into the numbers. Find the lawyer your mother used in secret, Caleb Rohr, downtown. He has the breadcrumb trail. Go now, before Karen realizes he exists. I left the clubhouse through the side exit, rain starting to slick the perfect sidewalks. My rental car smelled of stale air freshener and fresh dread. I checked the rearview mirror every block. The sensation of being watched prickled my neck, the same feeling I got when auditing cartel accounts. Caleb Rohr's office was a squat brick building wedged between a parking garage and a derelict print shop, the kind of place where desperate residents went when the HOA threatened foreclosure. I took the stairs, knocked, and a chain rattled. Caleb opened the door a crack, face pale. You shouldn't be here. It's not safe. My mother is dead, mister. Roar. Safety is no longer my priority. He pulled me inside, triple-locked the door, and yanked the blinds shut. The office smelled of stale coffee and fear. Your mother came to me 6 months ago. She knew she couldn't trust the family firm Karen controlled. She wanted a codicil that would supersede everything Karen forced her to sign. He pulled a folder with trembling hands. She was terrified. She made me install an encrypted server. She said if she died under any circumstances that weren't clearly natural, like a lightning strike in the community pool, I was to file for an independent autopsy immediately. She expected to be killed. I said, the words tasting like ash. Caleb nodded. She expected an accident. Heart attack, fall down the stairs. Something the HOA Wellness Committee could spin as stress for neighborhood disputes. He handed me a silver USB drive. This is the motive. A shadow ledger of every HOA fee siphoned into shell companies. Blue Hollow Freight, Meridian Logistics, classic layering. And there's an audio file. Denise recorded Karen and a man named Miles arguing about the trust. My hand closed around the drive. Then his phone buzzed. Caller ID made the color drain from his face. He silenced it without answering. We're done. Leave. Now. He shoved me toward the back fire escape. I took the service elevator instead. When the doors opened in the lobby, Belvas, Karen's daughter, stood there in a cream power suit, examining abstract art like she owned the building. Kinsley, she purred. Didn't peg you for slumming it in dumps like this. I kept my voice steady. I could say the same. Daddy usually keeps you in the penthouse. Belle laughed, sharp and short. I was just dropping off a settlement offer from Mr. Roar. We'll like to be proactive. I lied through my teeth. I got enough. She stepped aside. Run along. Leave the real business to the adults. I walked out into the rain, every instinct screaming. A black SUV idled across the street. I drove in circles for an hour, then checked into a cash motel on the edge of town. At 11 p.m., the news hit. Downtown office building fire. Caleb's building. Third floor law office completely destroyed. Electrical failure, the reporter said. I stared at the screen, hand over my mouth. They hadn't just burned the paper trail. They'd burned the lawyer. And Belle had been in the lobby playing gatekeeper. Fire destroys paper. It melts plastic, but it leaves traces. And if Karen thought she could burn the truth out of existence, she had never met a woman who could reconstruct a crime scene from a pile of HOA ash. I picked up my phone. Evelyn needed to know the war had just escalated from petty fines to felony arson. The fluorescent lights of Harborgate Forensics hummed their usual white noise lullaby, but this morning they felt like a countdown. I walked in wearing my work armor, charcoal suit, silk blouse, poker face, and sat on my dual monitors like nothing had happened. Colleagues offered sad smiles and so sorry about your mom murmurs. They had no idea I'd watched a lawyer's office burn to the ground 24 hours earlier. I logged in and started with Blue Hollow Freight LLC. Delaware registered, mail drop address, classic shell. 9 months old. Exactly when Mom first mentioned feeling foggy and Karen started helping with the household finances. I traced the layering. $5,000 to Apex Consulting, then Meridian Logistics, then straight into Blue Hollow. Every transfer just under the $10,000 reporting threshold. Structuring. Smuffing. The hallmark of someone who knew the rules just well enough to break them. A secure chat window popped up on my second monitor. Network secure. Evelyn sends regards. Call me Cypher. I typed back. Blue Hollow. We're already inside their server. Empty ghost ship. But the physical host is in the same building as Karen's private equity firm. Cypher kept feeding me data. We recovered the cloud backup of Denise's phone. Karen wiped the physical device, but missed the sync window. A folder appeared. Photos of me and Grandma gone. But banking apps and email intact. They needed Mom alive digitally for two-factor authentication. They hadn't killed the woman. They'd killed the obstacle and kept the signature. I opened the health data. Mom's smartwatch showed her heart rate spiking at 8:30 a.m. The day she died, panic, exertion, erratic at 8:45. But the fall accelerometer didn't register impact until 9:15. 30 minutes of cardiac distress before the accident. The fall didn't cause the heart attack. The heart attack happened, and then someone staged the body on the stairs. "You monsters," I whispered. Cypher pinged again. "You have a tail. Gray Ford Explorer. Planted while you were inside the clubhouse. Leave now. Service exit. Coordinates for safe house incoming." I yanked the hard drive from my tower and walked out fast. My manager called after me. "Leaving already?" "Family emergency." I lied without slowing. I took the stairs 12 flights, exited the loading dock, hailed a cab. The gray SUV pulled out 3 cars behind. I had the driver zigzag through residential streets. It followed. I jumped out at a busy mall, sprinted into the crowd, and doubled back to the safe house on foot. Evelyn was waiting, brewing tea like a general watching artillery. "They crossed the line," she said. "Trying to frame you." I sank onto the sofa, still smelling faintly of rain and fear. It almost worked. If I'd started that car. Evelyn handed me a document. "My lawyers just filed a draft civil RICO complaint against Karen. 10 years of suspicious HOA transactions. Shell companies. Offshore accounts. I'm offering her a choice. Lose the trust or lose everything." My phone buzzed with a secure email from the hospital records department. Subpoenaed toxicology. Elevated digoxin and potassium chloride. Mom wasn't prescribed digoxin. She took blood pressure meds. They poisoned her to mimic a natural cardiac event, then threw the body down the stairs. "We have the money trail, the forgery, and now the weapon," Evelyn said. "Tomorrow is the injunction hearing. Karen thinks she's walking in and painting you as the crazy, estranged daughter." I looked at the report one last time. I'm not going in as the daughter. I'm going in as the prosecutor. The next morning, the courtroom was packed. On one side sat Karen in her power suit, flanked by her lawyers and kids. On our side, Shark attorney Eleanor Vance and me. Evelyn watched via secure feed from a black van outside. She was still legally dead until the paperwork cleared. Karen's attorney boomed. "This injunction is baseless harassment by a disgruntled daughter written out of the will." Eleanor sliced back. "Because the next of kin paid $5,000 cash to bypass the 48-hour cremation waiting period. Mr. Abernathy is cooperating." The rush wasn't grief. It was forensic evasion. The judge granted the motion instantly. The body was now a ward of the court, headed for full autopsy. Karen's face turned the color of cheap HOA mulch. During recess, Agent Miller from the FBI met me in the conference room. We got the forgery analysis. The ink on the beneficiary change form came from Caleb Rohr's custom Mont Blanc, stolen before the fire. The same hand that set the arson. He played grainy neighbor surveillance. 2 a.m. The night Mom died. A slender figure in dark clothes carrying Mom's leather accordion file, the one she called her insurance policy. The walk was confident and titled. Not a thief. Someone with a key. Under a street lamp, the face blurred, but the jawline and hair sweep-screamed woman. The rental car traced back to Blue Hollow Freight. A bailiff knocked. "Someone wants to speak with you." "Urgent." Belle Voss. I found Belle in the second-floor ladies' room, mascara running, looking like a Ming vase that had just shattered. "I didn't know they were going to kill her," she sobbed. "I thought it was just asset restructuring." Karen said Denise was being difficult about the trust. Miles told her to handle it. I swear I didn't know about the medicine. She gave me the closer, the woman Karen called the architect, a professional forger who forged signatures. And she confirmed the 2 a.m. visitor was that closer. I left her weeping and returned to the courtroom just as Eleanor filed an emergency motion for theft of estate by deception. The judge ordered Karen to produce every HOA record within 24 hours. The final blow came in chambers. The judge held the preliminary autopsy summary. Cause of death: Cardiac event induced by toxic levels of digoxin and potassium chloride. The deceased was already dead when the body was placed on the stairs. Manner of death: homicide. She revoked Karen's bail and issued a bench warrant. 2 bailiffs moved in. Karen Voss, the woman who had fined residents for unsightly grief and stolen millions in HOA dues, was handcuffed in her own perfect suit. As I led her away, she hissed at me, "You think you won? Miles will burn it all down." But the war wasn't over. Karen was just a pawn. The queen was still out there, and the gloves were still on. The interrogation room smelled of stale coffee and desperation. I watched through the one-way glass as Karen sat with her arms crossed, checking her watch like she had tea time. But before we could break her, we needed the mortar. That mortar was Belle, shivering under a wool blanket in the safe house living room 2 hours earlier. "Tell me about the night before she died," I said. Every breath. Belle stared into her tea. "I woke at 1 a.m. for water." I heard Karen and Mom hissing in the study. Karen said, "You're drowning us. Just sign the trust transfer or you'll lose everything." Then the doorbell rang at 2 a.m. Karen answered. When she came back, she wasn't alone. A man, tall, silver hair, medical bag. Karen called him Miles. He said, "Go upstairs, make sure the daughter is asleep. I'll handle the consultation." Evelyn's voice cut like a scalpel. Miles Arden. She stood, knuckles white. 20 years ago, he was my brightest junior analyst. I caught him siphoning pennies. I destroyed him. He went underground and built the exact network you found. This wasn't just greed. It was revenge against me. Killing Denise to hurt me from beyond the grave. Cypher walked in holding a rugged hard drive. Data recovery from Caleb's burned office. Single Excel file survived, named funeral. It's a timeline. Target death event. Cremation window under 48 hours. Obstacle removal. Kinsley Roberts. Strategy. Legal exclusion. Trigger emotional volatility so she gets dragged out of the clubhouse. They needed you outside so the trust clause wouldn't trigger. They had turned my grief into a legal loophole. Back in the interrogation room, I walked in alone. Karen sneered. The prodigal daughter. Come to apologize for ruining the memorial? I sat. The autopsy is done. They found the digoxin and the potassium chloride. Karen's left eye twitched. I don't know what that is. I leaned forward. You drove 3 towns over, paid cash at a compounding pharmacy. You signed a logbook, Marcus Drennan, anagram of the honeymoon hotel name you and Mom used. Handwriting matches the cremation order. Matches your marriage license. Sentimental coward. Karen laughed nervously. Anyone could use that name. And we have Belle, I said softly. She told us about the argument. About Miles. About the 2 a.m. Closer. At Miles' name, Karen collapsed in on herself. She sobbed into her hands. He made me do it. He said if I didn't help, he'd frame me for the embezzlement. He said it would be quick. She looked right at me while her heart stopped. I stood, fighting nausea. The confession was recorded. Karen Voss was done. In the hallway, Evelyn waited, looking older than I'd ever seen her. He gave up Miles? The police are issuing an APB right now. Evelyn touched my arm. There's something I need to tell you. 5 years ago, when the threats from Miles started, Denise begged me to disappear. She said if I fought, he would target you, the grandchild, to get to the grandmother. She lived with the grief of my death every day so you could walk safely. The anger I carried toward Mom for staying silent evaporated. She hadn't been weak. She had been a human shield. A commotion at the front of the station. Officers led Karen out in handcuffs. The press swarmed. Karen caught sight of me on the steps and stopped. She smiled, a manic, knowing smile. You think you won? Ask her about the scar. Ask her why she never takes off the gloves. You think the dead come back? You're just a pawn in a game between 2 devils. The squad car drove away. I turned to the black sedan where Evelyn waited. She lowered the window and smiled. Get in, Kinsley. Miles is still out there. I looked at her gloved hands on the wheel. The memory flashed. Real Evelyn in the garden peeling an orange, jagged scar on the back of her left hand from a childhood glass bottle accident. This woman had worn gloves since the moment she stepped out of the sedan. I had never seen her hands. I reached for the door handle, but didn't lock it. The mystery of my mother's death might be solved, but the mystery of my own survival was just beginning. The courtroom was packed to capacity, a sea of pastel blazers and nervous sweat. I sat in the witness box, hands steady on the railing. I was no longer the band daughter. I was the narrator of their destruction. District Attorney Vance paced. MS. Roberts, explain what you found when you analyzed the financial records of your late mother's estate and the Sunnyvale HOA Trust. I looked at the jury, 12 ordinary people who thought an HOA fine was the worst thing that could happen. I found the Harbor Ledger. My mother tracked every illicit wire transfer Karen Voss made. Every transaction ending in .33 was a diversion to shell companies. The money flowed to Blue Hollow Freight, then offshore accounts controlled by Miles Arden. The motive for the rush to cremate was concealment. They needed to destroy the body because it held the biological proof of murder. I held up the high-resolution photo of the forged beneficiary form. The ink came from Caleb Rohr's stolen Mont Blanc, the same hand that set the arson. Karen's attorney Sterling tried cross-examination, tone dripping condescension. Let's be honest. You hadn't seen your mother in 6 months. You were estranged. You didn't even know she was taking new medication. Aren't you inventing this conspiracy because you were cut out of the will? I was protected, I said. Not cut out. Sterling scoffed. Banned from memorial. Your own stepmother said you were unstable. We have reports you were found in a car smelling of vodka just days ago. Are we supposed to trust a woman clearly having a breakdown? The vodka was planted, I replied. And everyone is lying except me? The funeral director, Karen, Bell, the police, or perhaps you're just dancing to the tune of the mysterious billionaire backing your legal team. A voice rang from the back of the courtroom. I am. Every head turned. The double doors swung open. Evelyn Halstead walked in wearing a cream suit that radiated power. Gasps rippled. Reporters stood. Flashbulbs popped outside the glass. Karen shot to her feet. That's not her. She's dead. Evelyn ignored the bailiffs and stopped at the bench. I apologize for the disruption, Your Honor, but the court requires a witness to authenticate the origin of the trust. The judge stared. You are Evelyn H. Halstead. The Evelyn Halstead. I am. And I'm not dead. I have been in protective hiding for 5 years to avoid the very criminal syndicate sitting at the defense table. Karen screamed, Imposter! Look at her hands. She wears gloves. Evelyn turned slowly. She reached down and pulled the leather glove off her left hand. The jagged silvery scar from the childhood glass bottle accident gleamed under the courtroom lights. The dead do not have scars. Only the survivors do. She placed a sealed envelope on the ledge. This was mailed to me by Denise 3 days before she was murdered. It contains a signed affidavit detailing how Karen and Miles threatened her, how they forced her to practice copying her own signature. And at the bottom, in her own trembling hand, she wrote, They're going to kill me to stop the audit. Karen collapsed. Not metaphorically. Her knees gave out and she fell back in her chair, head hitting the table with a dull thud. She buried her face in her hands and sobbed like the empire she'd built on petty fines and stolen millions had finally crumbled. The judge's gavel cracked. Bail denied. All assets associated with the Kessler estate, the Halstead Trust, and the entities Blue Hollow and Meridian are frozen. Mr. Kessler, Karen Voss, is remanded to custody immediately. This transcript goes to the FBI for RICO expansion. 2 bailiffs hauled Karen to her feet. She didn't fight. She looked like a husk. But as they cuffed her, Bell stood from the gallery, tears ruining her perfect makeup. He told me it was Bell. No, Karen told me the night before the funeral. He was drinking, laughing. He said, it doesn't matter what she knows. Just make sure Kinsley doesn't step foot in the clubhouse. If she stays in the parking lot, we win. The courtroom went silent. The final nail. Banning me wasn't grief. It was tactical. The judge adjourned. I walked over to Evelyn. She was putting her glove back on. "You came back," I said. "I never left," she replied, touching my cheek. "I just moved to the shadows to watch your back." But now we're walking in the sun. We walked out of the courthouse together. The heavy doors swung open and afternoon light hit us. Across the street, I could see the steeple of the clubhouse where it all began. I remembered standing there in the rain, clutching a wreath, being dragged away like a rule violation. I had felt like an orphan twice, once by death, once by lies. But they hadn't locked me out. They had locked themselves in a cage of forgery and murder. They thought the covenants would protect them. They forgot I had the key. Mom gave it to me. It wasn't metal. It was numbers. It was the harbor ledger. I took a deep breath of fresh air. I wasn't the estranged daughter anymore. I was the administrator. I was the auditor. And the account was finally balanced. "Let's go home, Kinsley," Evelyn said. "Yes," I answered, turning away from the clubhouse. "Let's go home." The truth had opened the door. For the first time in a long time, I walked through it. Not as a victim, but as the woman my mother knew I could be.